Okay. Okay. Welcome to my Tikkun Zoom Shavuot session titled Dreaming Tanakh, an incoherent journey of what ifs and why nots in the wee hours of the night. Please take a deep breath and prepare to strap on your wings of Midrashic liberties. And let's start with the beginning, with Genesis. But flow would well up from the ground and water the whole surface of the earth. This line came to mind when I found a poem by poet Irene Matthew, Soil. The way you say soil sounds like soul, as in, after we walked through the woods, my feet were covered in soul. When it rains, the soul turns to mud. The soul is made of decomposed plant and animal matter. Edaphology is the study of the soul's influence on living things, while pedology is the study of how soul is formed, its particular granularity. You are rooted in a certain red patch of soul that bled you and your hundreds cousins to life, a slow, warm river you call home. Maybe there is soul under everything, even when we strike rock first. The way you say soil, you make a poem out of every speck of dirt. And I think this fits in with that particular moment in Genesis 2, when it's about to happen that life comes forth. I would like everyone to jump in if they have comments. So that might keep you awake. And I'm not going to read poems all the session. I did this the first time I taught at 3 a.m. and I was only talking to black screens. I fear I've talked everyone to sleep. So let's get a bit lively. Feel free to jump in if you have comments, but we can go on. The translations are all from the JPS Tanakh, the edition of 2023, unless otherwise stated. So, the next step. And God said, let us make humankind in our image, after our likeness. B'Tselem, B'Tselmenu. So, here I would like to play with emphasis. What if we shift from let us make humankind in our image to let us make humankind in our image? That would shift our importance in creation radically. Number one, makes us the aim, the objective of creation. And number two implies we are not just the finishing touches to a complete complete creation. Pushing us off the pedestal of being over important. And I think that fits well with Micah 6:8. You have been told, O mortal, what is good, and what God requires of you, only to do justice and to love goodness and to walk modestly with your God. Sorry.
Ah, the iPad is rebelling.
Yes, I try to get rid of my picture in the bottom, but it doesn't let me. Okay. Yeah, tech gremlins.
So does this change in emphasis go from a perspective that's more anthropocentric versus a perspective that humanity is just one tiny part of nature and the natural order is what is important in Adonai's view?
Yeah. Uh, what if revelation was to all of creation and we only understood what we can with our means, just like bees see ultraviolet, green, and blue, but not red, and snakes see infrared, some snakes. So we only see a special spectrum and ignore what else is there or overrate our importance.
But at the same time, God did give humankind in Genesis 1 dominion over the earth. Didn't mean we
Yes,
owned
but
it, but we are giving care of everything. We should be protecting it.
yes,
But it certainly puts us in center stage to really take care of things.
but that's what the bee thinks too, I think.
Mhm.
So this was the message we understood with the filters we have inbuilt.
Mhm.
But they could, they don't have to be opposites. They could be playing with each other. Like one is saying, let us make humankind in our image as if we can reflect sort of the what Micah is saying or the purist or what God is, and also let sort of let God help us, guide us, make to be in their image, but they're both sort of playing with the same thing, which is that there's this essence of love, goodness, justice, that we are both cajoled, pushed, helped into, and also have the ability to be, right? To also reflect back.
Yeah, great. So the next, going back to creation, the eternal God said, "It is not good for the human to be alone. I will make a fitting counterpart for him." And the eternal God formed out of the earth all the wild beasts and all the birds of the sky and brought them to the human to see what he would call them. And whatever the human called each living creature, that would be its name. And the human gave names to all the cattle and to the birds of the sky and to all the wild beasts, but no fitting counterpart for a human being was found. So this is before man and woman are separated. So what I wondered is the human is not gender segregated at that moment. And a lot of humans would have chosen a cat and or a dog, even more a puppy or a kitten as a companion. But either dogs and cats were not created by then, or the dog and cat person only uh, were created when men and women were separated. Men and women were separated. Maybe uh, the first human would live happily ever after with their dog in Eden still, but it didn't happen. And before we come to the creation of the woman, I would like to share a reformed terse that I wrote for Rabbi Sekker's modern Midrash class on the impact of all these unnamed women saving Moses. Never underestimate women. They are the fabric, everything else is stitched on. And unfortunately, even patriarchy is stitched on this fabric. So, go on. So the eternal God cast a deep sleep upon the human, and while he slept, God took one of his sides and closed up the flesh at that side. And the eternal God fashioned the side that had been taken from the human into a woman, bringing her to the human. Then the human said, "This one at last is bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. This one shall be called the woman, for from the man was she taken." Hence a man leaves his father and mother and clings to his wife, so they become one flesh. It seems obvious that the man feels a loss after the woman was taken from him. As so often, we are not told what the woman feels about it, maybe even a sense of liberation. Or how would the pea feel after being taken from the pot?
The phrasing is particularly interesting here.
It's kind of interesting that it says that from the man was she taken, despite the fact that it was from the human that she was taken.
Yeah, man had not been defined
Man.
up until that very moment, exactly.
I think there is a slight mistake in the third verse. It should be after the woman was created, the man said, not the human said, because the human was man and woman. And then we have man and woman, or humans.
I can't read the Hebrew. Is the translation accurate?
Adam, it's both times Adam. So once they translate Adam as human, it's Adam even in the other verses, but at that point I would say, as a translator, then the man said, because that was left over after the woman was created.
I would like to propose a different interpretation. How do we know that it wasn't the initial piece that was the woman piece and that the man wasn't made out of the woman's side?
That's a good question. Yes, Catriella, it's Adam all the way down.
Until it says woman and from the man she was taken, because that's ish.
Okay, yes.
But it's interesting. The way that the pun works in Hebrew is it's that ish and isha. Like isha sounds like from ish. Ish being man, isha being woman. But I mean, if you ignore the gender of it all for a moment and note that it's the Adam, the human, who's saying it, then you could say that you could 100% look at this from the perspective that it's perhaps the feminine side that's talking, or the woman's side that is speaking. It's just that the ish would be the woman, and the Isha, the from Ish would be the man now.
Okay, let's go on. When the woman saw that the tree was good for eating and a delight to the eyes, and that the tree was desirable as a source of wisdom, she took of its fruit and ate. She also gave some to her husband, and he ate. Why? Here's another poem. But this is the last one. So, Eve After by Danusha Lameris. Did she know there was more to life than lions licking the furred ears of lambs, fruit trees dropping their fat bounty, the years droning on without argument? Too much quiet is never a good sign. Isn't there always something itching beneath the surface? But what could she say? The larder was full and they were beautiful, their bodies new as the day they were made. Each morning the same flowers broke through the rich soil, the birds sang, again in perfect pitch. It was only at night when they lay together in the dark that it was almost palpable, the vague sadness unnamed, foolishness, betrayal. Call it what you will. What a relief to feel the weight fall into her hand. And after, fall into her palm. And after, not to pretend anymore that the terrible calm was paradise. Lena, would you like to elaborate on the hum?
That's an interesting way to look at it.
Okay.
Definitely human nature, I suppose.
Catriela says, that's how I feel in West Coast summers. They're too perfect. I get bored. That's how I felt in the Mediterranean. Every evening, the same orange sun falling into the same blue sea, not a cloud in the sky. That's nice for a couple of weeks, but then it gets boring.
The way this feels to me is that the self-awareness grows and she starts to see the mechanisms underneath the natural order around her. And I don't know, is this the beginning of sentience, basically?
I didn't quite get this, Misha.
Never mind.
No, I acoustically.
Oh. So somebody can articulate this better than I, but the it seems to me this the wool is lifting from her eyes and she is gaining self-awareness of the natural order around her, and it seems to cast a pall of depression over her or of ennui.
Yes, seeing that it's pointless to stay in that garden, that it's time to move on, to develop, that nothing will ever happen if they won't leave the garden.
Seems like it's almost human nature to want more. Growing bored with the same thing over a period of time.
Yes,
Even
and
paradise, we would grow. I hate to use the word, but bored with paradise.
Well, isn't a lot of what our texts teach is that choice is one of the most important things in our book? Like, isn't this is one of two creation stories, right? And the other one is, I think, the one where it's the 7 days of creation instead of the rib story or the side story. If I'm remembering right, I'm not a Talmudic scholar, but or a biblical scholar rather, or either. But it's quite early in the morning. I'm not much of anything, but but what I but what I think is interesting is when you have what I do remember is the line where God says, "I set before you life and death, choose life." And I think that that's what Chaya does, and that's what her name means. She chooses life. There is no life in Eden. There can only be life outside of Eden.
and maybe she senses somehow, even before plucking the fruit, that she has to let in the evil inclination, because that's what makes the world progress, as the sages say, that they once banned the evil inclination. They managed to lock up the Yetzer Hara, and the chicken would stop laying eggs, and the world would stop. You have to control it, but you can't do without it.
Mm.
It's interesting that Eve only gets the name Eve or Hava only after she eats of the fruit and she's given the punishment of having difficulty in conceiving and in bearing kids. Um, and and the human gives it to her. Well, the Ish, though it refers to it as the Adam, the human gives that name to her, and then said because she's the mother of all things that live. So it's only after accepting in that perhaps a little bit, maybe I wouldn't even call it the evil inclination. It's the inclination towards a little bit of naughty curiosity um, that she get that she gets a name, that she becomes the mother.
Yeah, she couldn't be that in Eden.
Well, I think also if it goes back to the earlier teaching about us being made in their image, I mean the angels are often portrayed as mischievous and interesting and challenging of God and asking of God. And so in that sense, she is becoming sort of in that image of one that's not sort of like a baby that's caretaken and everything is perfect and you don't have to worry, to one that's growing up, that's sort of like in the same image of the other beings that are sort of in the Torah or the angels and all these other things that we sort of pull out.
Okay, let's get to Genesis 3:16. And to the woman God said, I will greatly expand your toil and your pregnancy. In hardship shall you bear children, yet your urge shall be for your husband, and his will shall prevail over yours. And what not my first, but after reading it several times, my reaction to this is what men like to think. But if we look at scripture closely, this is often not what happens. Think of Abraham arguing with God for the inhabitants of Sodom and Gomorrah, not to destroy them. But when Sarah wants to chase away Hagar and Ishmael, he doesn't argue with Sarah. He turns to God, and God doesn't argue with Sarah. So, where is Abraham's will? So, I think this is the theory, his will shall prevail, and what women make of it is something completely different. Or the other matriarchs. Think of Rivka and how Rachel and Leah barter for Jacob, where he will sleep and with whom. As soon as these men come into the tents, they have nothing to say anymore.
Well, certainly Rebecca was the dominant person of that couple. She was the one who said to herself, and then she made it happen, it is God's will that it should be Jacob and not Esau who should get the birthright and be the leader of the people going forward here. Isaac was totally passive on this, whether or not he really knew what was going on or was just passive. The dominant character in that entire chapter is Rebecca.
I think that's how it often is, that the man represents the couple to the outside world, and as soon as he comes home, he gets told what his will has to look like often. Maybe not that directly, but if I think of my grandmothers, they were very clear of who is the lion in the circus and who owns the circus. My grandfathers were allowed to roar in the circus, but the management was with the women. So they were really strong.
If you will, perhaps not your urge shall be for your husband. It's your urge or desire shall be for your husband to agree with. It's a bit, though, I mean, from another perspective, I mean, there is a patriarchal like vibe to this whole thing. Compare this to the probably later written priestly creation story, which comes first, in which man and women are created at once. And you get another picture, which is a lot more even-handed. Though it doesn't really talk about the distinctions between men and women.
Yes, I went for this branch of the creation story because it was easier to make the point that although it looks like women are supposed to be subordinate, uh, they aren't always, and they are also a part of the system. So the patriarchal system wouldn't function if there wouldn't be women allowing men to do what they do.
Just a personal opinion. I think the women have allowed the men to do far too much sometimes.
Just a personal opinion. I think that when men seize the reins of power in many ways, it does make it hard for women to have much room to maneuver. Especially if they won't even let us, be counted as people or study, things like that.
Yeah, the disparity is quite strong in the texts. It starts right at the beginning. Now, the male perspective of the writing of the text is so apparent.
Yeah. At the same time, I think of the story with Tamar and Judah as being so pivotal in Torah. Here we have the brothers throwing Joseph into this pit, telling Jacob that his favorite son is dead. There are a bunch of hooligans here. And then we have the Tamar story, who she really does reform Judah, who ends up being out of Judah. We have the ruling classes of the Hebrews here, and after Tamar and her influence on Judah, all of a sudden, I think the brothers are acting much more responsibly and much more as we would want them to act. And thank you, Tamar.
Yes, she takes things into her hands. And,
yes.
Moves the story onwards. And although women are not mentioned very often in Torah or Tanakh, and often not even named, it's a bit like if you read literature about the Acropolis, the thing that's less described are the foundations, but still the foundations are there and the rest wouldn't be there to look at for us. Yeah. So even if women are not in the forefront of what is seen, they hold the system up.
I mean, wouldn't that be saying, though, that the Hebrew slaves held up the system of Egypt?
In a way, they did. Because they not voluntarily, but they made a lot of things possible because they were cheap workforce, and they didn't have a choice. They could have rebelled, but
but not without dire consequences until they were able to be redeemed.
Yeah.
So it seems like perhaps Miriam should have led the women on our own journey through the wilderness until there had been some
Well, maybe she did. She was the one who found water in the desert. Maybe it's the foundational thing was Miriam finding water, and everyone followed her. But we don't read this.
Right. But we certainly do read about women being very instrumental in saving Moses. If it were not for the women, Moses would not have been saved. So
yes,
we have, again, we have examples of women really affecting the whole course of history here. With Rebecca, had Esau and not Jacob gotten the birthright, Esau was a brute of a man, the history would have been very different. Had Tamar not played her role with Judah, perhaps the brothers never would have grown up here. And had Moses not been saved here, certainly history would have been different. So these are women playing very active roles.
Yeah.
I think I would like to read a midrash on this subject. The Miriam journey, Catriella says, sign me up. Yes, I definitely want to read a midrash on this.
With the Song of Moses, which is sung first by Moses after the crossing of the Reed Sea, some historical critical perspective says that the reason it says right after the Song of Moses that Miriam and all the women started to sing, and then it repeats the first line of the Song of Moses, because originally the person who was singing this glorious war song for Adonai was originally Miriam, the prophetess, as she's called. And so it's possible that in an earlier strand of the development of the Torah that Miriam had a much more definite role.
Yeah, I would agree with Segev, because I think that there's just like so much, like based on like what Segev's saying and what Larry's saying and like the stories we have and the way that we kind of, if we look anthropologically at things, it seems like perhaps there is a patriarchal overlay over older stories that had more prominent matriarchs in them, and they've been a bit buried under retellings that kind of undermine.
Yeah, like Devorah.
Like foundations usually do, they are at the bottom. You have to dig for them often and try and find them. But they are there. They are always there. If there's something above, there must be something supporting it. Not something below, but something supporting it. And supporting something is really pivotal, as many of you said.
There's also a very interesting midrash about Jacob and Leah and Rachel, about Jacob and Rachel were afraid that what's his name, the brother Laban, would substitute Leah for Rachel because Leah was the older child and she should be married first, and she was a harder person to find a husband for because her eyes were weak, and she apparently wasn't all that attractive. So Jacob and Rachel developed a series of hand signals so that he would know that it was her underneath the veil. But Leah was very upset about the marriage, and there was talk of marrying her to Esau, since Jacob and Esau were twins, and Leah and Rachel were twins, and it seemed obvious to people at the time that they should be married that way, but she was terrified of Esau. So Rachel gave her the set of hand signals so that she could signal to Jacob, and Jacob thought that she was Rachel. And so Leah was married to Rachel to Jacob first, and when they went into the marriage tent to consummate the marriage, Rachel hid underneath the bed and spoke to Jacob so that he would think it was her that he was in bed with and not Leah. And so in the morning, he discovered the truth. And of course, we know that Laban married him to Rachel right away, but he was still deceived in that way by his wives, in addition to his brother-in-law. Thank you.
And this sounds much nicer than Jacob being too drunk to tell difference.
Right.
No, that he was too drunk when he went to the tent after
Yeah.
the. So
Yeah.
very beautiful. Okay, we're. I would like to go to the next erratic thing, the Shema. Hear Israel, Adonai is our God, Adonai is one. So we are commanded to say the Shema, and much more often than we cite the other attributes of God, like compassionate, gracious, slow to anger. And what could this tell us? Is there a parallel to oppressing the stranger, which is mentioned so often in Tanakh? It depends on which rabbinic authority you ask, between 36 and 46 times. And would striving for oneness be a kind of imitating God? And what could that mean, this oneness or unity? Shmuel?
I think the historical setting of this commandment that Adonai is one is to combat local cults of Adonai, local varieties of Hashem. People thinking that every city, everyone and the mother has their own version of Adonai, rooting for them. There's like pot shards that refer to Adonai of Teman and Adonai of Seir or something like that. Um, and this is fighting against or Adonai of the North. Um, and this is perhaps fighting against that, saying that Adonai is one God for all of us. And maybe that connects to the prohibition of oppressing a stranger, because it's if we all have the same God, then we all got to work together.
Misha writes, Gale writes, maybe the oneness is so important because it is the first commandment. And Misha writes, so to keep the faith united and prevent sectarianism early on.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Following up with Segev, I just didn't want to interrupt. But it seems like a mechanism to prevent the faith from fragmenting and to keep the people from not fragmenting further into tribes that do not get along. So a mechanism just to keep the people together on the one path.
And John writes, my favorite interpretation of the Shema is, listen deeply, O struggler, to the unity of all things. That's beautiful. That's really good. That would fit in with what we talked about first, if we are in the image or if we are the image. So are we a part of everything or are we set apart?
Mm-hmm. Another explanation I've heard of God is one, and this was a devar shared by Rabbi Daniel Schaefer. God is one is a combination of God is creator, God is deliverer, and then the revelation of God.
Okay, we're close to the end, so and I still have material. I'm really happy that this discussion is going so well. And any woman with a name would be as wise. From Samuel 14:2, so Joab sent to Tekoa and brought from there a woman who was wise. Here I find interesting that the text says, does not say Ha'isha ha'chachama with a definitive article. It didn't bring the wise woman of Tekoa, so we may assume that there were more than one. And why I wrote any woman with a name would be as wise, since seeing woman as pivotal or foundational is a choice, just like seeing them as exceptional. Why not read everywhere where an unnamed woman is mentioned? You could have asked any woman to fulfill that task.
Someone in the chat brought up the story of Ruth, which you did not mention. It was a named woman who had a very strong role in the history of Israel. And it's a very interesting story about the sexual mores at the time of the threshing floor. That she was able to sort of seduce Boaz. It was a very common thing at the time for people to be somewhat sexually free on the threshing floors. And Boaz was one of the people who could redeem her. He was related to Naomi. So he was one of the people who could redeem Ruth by marrying her. There were two suitors who were possible for a levirate marriage. In other words, Ruth had been married to one of Naomi's sons, and she didn't have any children. So one of the relatives should have married her and redeemed her, and the first child would be credited to Naomi's son, basically to Naomi. But it was complicated by the fact that the other candidate, who's referred to simply as Ploni Almoni, which is the Hebrew equivalent of John Doe. He didn't want to marry Ruth because apparently it would screw up his own inheritance. And so that's why Boaz has to go to the gate and meet him there and bargain with him as to who's going to marry Ruth. And I also always thought that it was very interesting that the way it's told in the Torah, Ruth has the baby and she dies in childbirth. And I think it's interesting that in many stories about women, the women play their role and then they die, which I think is convenient for the male rabbis who wrote the stories. It's also true. Another favorite story of mine is about the talking donkey in Balak, who was also female, and also died right after the story because animals shouldn't have dominion over people. But I think a lot of it is just the rabbis wanting to get rid of the women. So I could go on about that, but I won't. Thank
Thank
you.
you for sharing this, Claire. I could, if I can find it, put the link to the PDF in the chat.
Also, in that story, Ruth was kind of treated like property, as I remember it. That the Redeemer first said that he wanted the property, but then when Boaz told him if he had the property, he'd also have Ruth, he changed his mind. So she was kind of equal. They were like selling her like property, it seemed to me.
Yeah, well, they did, yes. But it was important because the property was the only income that Naomi had. The two of them had no money. That's why Ruth was out in the fields. That people who had no money, who were poor, were allowed to glean to glean grain in the corners of the fields, and what the people who were actually cutting the grain would drop pieces of grain, or they'd leave pieces of grain, and poor people were allowed to glean them. So Ruth was sent out ostensibly to glean the fields because she and Naomi had no other income at all. They had no money for food or anything like that. But Naomi's real reason in sending her was to make Boaz look at her and to marry her because he was wealthy and he had a claim on Ruth, and it would just be a good match as far as Naomi was concerned. So yeah, they did treat her like a piece of a piece of something, just to sell. But unfortunately, that's the role that women played at the time. And Naomi and Ruth needed the income because they had no men to bring in any money or food or to take care of them. So they needed someone, and Boaz seemed like a good candidate. Thanks.
Okay, so everyone can get a short break. I think we should end it at this. Thank you for the lively discussion. And see you next year, 3 a.m. maybe.
Thank you very much.
Yasha
Thank you,
Rito.
Friedhelm. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank
The
you.
Torah study.
Thank you.
Oops.